Okay, y'all, Lionsgate season. Jeez Louise, it has been an energetic roller coaster. I'm sorry I haven't posted anything in the last couple of weeks, but I have a lot of nuggets. There's been some really interesting themes in the private readings, and I think I'm going to do a longer video about this later, but I just want to do a short one now. Just checking in and saying hello, but also sharing just some important advice that I guess I've gotten from these readings that have really helped me through this season, and I'm hoping that it's going to help you as well, because it's been exhausting. One thing I will say is that the energy is exhausting right now, and I think it's because so much is shifting, changing, rearranging, rendering, that it's almost like having a million tabs open on your computer at once, and things start to overheat and slow down and get glitchy. So if you are feeling exhausted and you're feeling the melees, my question would be, is it yours or is it collective? And if it feels like it's not yours, the exercise that's been working for me is just visualizing like mud kind of sloughing off of me, and getting my body moving and dancing, especially, and smudging, whatever really helps to just kind of break up and move the energy. Again, to each their own, but whatever works for you. And the other really big theme that's been coming up in the readings is, and this I think is the most important one, is that your intuition has not misled you. There's almost like an intuition crisis that I think is happening right now for a lot of people, myself included, because the last couple of weeks and months have been all over the map. And for the most part, I think a lot of us really make all of our decisions based on, our heart, on our gut feeling, on our knowing, and faith, right? Faith and trusting the process is probably the primary motivator for most of us. So when you move in particular directions and it seems like things are stalling out, or nothing is rendering, or circumstances aren't changing, it can create a bit of a faith crisis, or an intuition crisis at least. And the other aspect of that right now is that there's no real clear guidance or direction in terms of where to go next, or what to do next. And I think for a lot of people, it seems as though most of what you came in here to do, you've kind of done. And even things that you didn't even realize you needed to do. But it's like, at least again, for like a lot of private readings that I've done, it seemed like whatever was coming up next was like a blank slate, dealer's choice. You kind of get to determine where you want to take your story from now on. It's like you are the author of your own autobiography in real time, reinventing yourself as a protagonist. And that can be kind of stressful, right? Because it's almost like energetic crickets, right? The spirits are not coming into your ear and saying, "Hey, girl, you got to do X, Y, and Z." It's dealer's choice, right? It's a blank rendering space. And then for so that was like one portion of the collective, and then for another portion of the collective, it's almost like being split between two timelines. I don't really want to say split between two timelines, because you are only on the one timeline, which is the new. And even the word timeline is kind of messy, but let's say the space, right? There's the new space and the old space, right? Each space contains multiple timelines, but the spaces themselves have their own parameters, their own terms and conditions, settings, whatever it may be. So the old space would have been the loops, the nightmare realm, whatever you want to call it, where, no good deed goes unpunished, one thing after another, yada, yada. All roads lead to a mess, right? We are not in that space anymore. But psychically, mentally, it's like there's a part of us that thinks that we're still there. It's kind of the same idea as like a PTSD, right? And the theme that's been coming up in the readings, so it's like different cards will indicate this to me, right? So the cards that indicate being in a new space, being kind of karmically clean, so to speak, right? Where it's like dealer's choice, that's been a lot of aces and the world card and things like that. And then in terms of this more kind of stalled out energy, it's been all of the nines, right? So the Nine of Wands, Nine of Swords, Nine of Cups, Nine of Pentacles. So Nine of Swords is regret, coulda, shoulda, woulda, assuming that you've made a wrong turn or a wrong choice, or I must have screwed something up, or kind of beating yourself up, right? It's the energy of beating yourself up, assuming that you failed at something, that your circumstances must be indicating that you're not worthy of redemption or whatever it may be, right? And then there's the Nine of Wands, which is the PTSD, the negative anticipation of the future, right? Where it's like, even if there's no evidence in the timeline that things are going wrong, it's the anticipation or the expectation that eventually another shoe is going to drop, right? And the medicine for that has been Nine of Cups, Nine of Pentacles. So, Nine of Cups is very much so the energy of being at peace with the story, right? Even the aspects of the story where it seems like things have gone wrong, right? It's the recognition that ultimately all roads are leading to the Goldilocks zone, if you want to call it that. That's at least what I've been calling it recently, because it's like, the word paradise is subjective, and all of these words are subjective, but I like Goldilocks zone. So that's at least what I'm using right now. So all roads are leading to the Goldilocks zone, even the things that we've qualified as mistakes, because it's like, who told you that those things were mistakes, right? Did God descend on a cloud and say, listen, sis, I was going to give you your manifestation, but you didn't give that homeless person $1, so canceled. Sorry. It doesn't work like that, right? We are so much harder on ourselves than the universe is. If anything, it's like, I honestly think that we are the ones that determine what it is that we experience, right? We've been told that there's this external judgmental force that sits there with the notepad and keeps score, but is there really an external judgmental force, or is it just this one? I think it's just the one inside of our heads, honestly. And we are much harder on ourselves than the universe is, right? Because we have this assumption that in order to qualify for the Goldilocks zone, the paradise timeline, whatever, then you have to be perfect, right? An absolutely perfect human being who has never made a mistake and does everything right and yada, 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 right? So there's things in the past that you're not proud of that you wish you could change, right? That's Nine of Swords kind of energy. And then Nine of Wands is the assumption that there's going to be some sort of karmic repercussion in the future for something that's unresolved in the past. The medicine, like I was saying, is the Nine of Cups, which is kind of recontextualizing or reframing the past, almost like Grandpa's war story, where it's like the recognition that all of these things lead to a greater good. So it can be the idea of looking at the past and thinking like, oh, maybe I should have made different choices, or I would have been in other circumstances. But how many times do you look back and realize that hindsight is 2020, and the doors that were closed to you in the past would not have led to the greener pastures that you thought that they would have led to, right? Because you can look back and say, oh geez, if that door had opened, I would be here as opposed to there. I would have never met X, Y, and Z, or so and so. You know what I'm saying? And the other side of it is, so that's about the doors to the past. I'm losing my train of thought, sorry. With the Nine of Cups. So the Nine of Cups is about being, again, proud of the story, or at least at peace with the story. And what's come through with the private readings, the epiphany that I've had, or not really even the epiphany I had, because I guess when I'm reading, it's kind of like channeling, right? I guess anyone else out there who reads tarot, you know what I'm talking about, where it's like you are surprised by the information that comes out of your mouth half the time, and you're like, ooh, I need to remember that because that would actually be helpful. So it's not exactly coming from my head, but you get what I'm saying. The message that was coming through the readings was that basically, in terms of things that we would qualify as regrets or mistakes, the fact that you're not proud of actions that might have been like lower vibrational actions for you, right? Maybe somebody triggered you into anger or whatever it may be, right? It happens. The fact that you're not proud of it is huge, right? If there is anybody up there that's keeping score and looking, trust and believe you get an A plus simply because you are not proud. Do you know what I'm saying? Right? If you were sitting there digging your heels in and saying, well, you know what? I'm glad that I was petty in that moment, because F this and F the world, and then, you might get a C minus, right? But if you're looking back and saying, oh, if I were to experience that again, I would not react the same way, or that taught me that, I don't really feel good when I do things like that. A plus, you've passed, right? So that's really kind of like the best way to release that energy. And then the other theme that was coming up with all of this is that it's like your current circumstance is not a punishment, right? You are not being set up for failure. You are not being dragged into some other kind of nightmare timeline. The other thing to remember is that, again, we're playing timeline hopscotch, right? So timelines are shifting 1,000 times a day. It's the law of impermanence. Nothing is as it seems, nothing is forever. The best anecdote that I can use for this is that I have a friend that's a realtor that was just telling me a story about, there was a customer that they wanted to put in an offer at a particular number on a particular property. And considering this customer, it's like that was an impossible task. So to get them to the table with the right number in and of itself is a timeline jump. This property had seen very little action. Of course, as soon as they bring the offer to the table, the property is seeing a ton of action. That evening, somebody comes to the table with a cash offer over asking, and of course, the sellers accept that and their offer is rejected. Next morning, they wake up and the cash offer was rescinded. That very, very, very rarely happens, right? You would assume that if you're putting a cash offer in, you're committed, right, at that point. For somebody to renege on that offer slightly, like minutes later, unheard of. That is the timeline right now. Every hour on the hour, we are on a new timeline completely. So if you are finding yourself in a circumstance where you think, things are starting to fall apart, give it 15 minutes, okay? And Nine of Wands, it's like that's an energy that's projected into the future, right? So it's an energy of negative anticipation. And one thing that this is not even a theme of like recent readings, but just a theme in general for the last few years that I've been doing this, is we spend so much time worrying about what we're afraid of, the worst case scenario, that we don't even take a moment to visualize what the best case scenario would look like, the Goldilocks zone. What would that feel like? How would we react? How would we act in general? And that's where the Nine of Pentacles as medicine comes in, right? The Nine of Pentacles, it's a Venus energy, right? It's the five senses. It's about feeling, imperfect feeling, what your Goldilocks zone would feel like, right? How would you operate? How would you think? How would you act? What would that feel like? My favorite manifestation trick or hack is to visualize the moment after the manifestation, right? The moment after, that lump sum of money hits your account and, you can pay every bill that you have or whatever. Who would you call and what would you say, right? You would call your best friend or whoever it would be and say, girl, it happened easier and quicker than I could have ever imagined, with no resistance. It happened out of nowhere. It's a miracle, right? Miracles don't need to make sense. So that is the beauty of a miracle. And visualizing that, and then also visualizing how you would feel and feeling that feeling in real time of what it would feel like to be comfortable in your Goldilocks zone, right? And what choices would you make, and how would you operate, and how would you move? Excuse me. And what else do I want to say about those things? Honestly, 100%, I think that the biggest miracle that you have ever experienced in your entire life, in terms of a timeline jump, in terms of something happening out of nowhere, is happening soon. Very, like, soon. Sooner than soon, okay? Whatever number you just came up with in your head, less than that. The reason why I say that is because of the way that things are aligned right now. And because of just how explosive and crazy the energy is, and the fact that, like I said, magic and miracles do not need to make sense. So that's the issue with the intuition lockup and wondering if we've made mistakes, wondering if we're making the right choices, if we should move forward, where to move, yada, yada, yada. It's things are having trouble rendering right now because we're being too logical. Okay? Magic and miracles, there is no rhyme or reason. There is no logic. There is no data. One of the problems is that it's like we don't know what the script is, right? We don't really know how this whole thing is supposed to play out. So that's why I think a lot of us are thinking we must have screwed something up, right? But I really don't think that we have, right? And I honestly think that if we could see the contract, if we could see the script, we would be shocked by how much of it we've already fulfilled, if not all of it, right? And how successful we've been, right? So again, it's like whatever circumstance you find yourself in, it is not punishment at all. And if anything, it's like this is absolute best launch pad for you to jump into your next manifestation. And think about it, it's like when we're comfortable, we don't really try to manifest, right? It's like when things are peaches and cream and you got the silver spoon in your mouth, it's like you're good, right? You're not really thinking about what else you need to change. But it's like awareness is the universal solvent, right? So in order to take these things on and alchemize them, we have to experience them, we have to be aware of it. And it's kind of like the idea that, well, basically, it's like whatever it is that's been presented before you, your environment, whatever's at your disposal, that is all material for you to work with and to alchemize. And the best way that I can explain it, the download that's been coming in recently, is that it's almost like we're all computer programmers, that we've incarnated here with the mission of reprogramming this place, right? Like the IT team. There's glitches, there's viruses, there's issues, whatever, and we are fixing it code by code, line by line, individually, whatever it may be. And perhaps what's in front of you looks like an impossible task. Trust and believe. Everything that we experience in this world at one point was an impossible task, right? I'm talking to you on a piece of plastic that's being broadcast around the world, right? 100 years ago, this was an impossible task. Think about the phenomena of people who break world records. I think San has talked about this before, but I could be wrong. But like the idea of like an Olympic runner that breaks a particular speed record or whatever it is, right? It takes years and years and years and years for somebody to break that record. And then as soon as somebody does it, dozens of other people do it, right? And it's like the bar just gets raised or something like that. And that's what I think we are doing right now, where it's like we are breaking records, we are doing the impossible, right? And it's like once we do it in our own situation, it's like a hundredth monkey type experience. It goes viral, it helps everybody else, and that's, I think, why certain things are happening. But I'm a big fan of free speech, but my least three favorite words that I would choose to delete if I could are trust the process, because it is so hard to trust the process when everything is frustrating you and it feels like the sword is at your neck. But the overwhelming theme that I've seen in so many readings is the reminder from the universe that the universe has not given up on you. It is so proud of you. The fact that you're still trying, that you haven't given up, that you have the desire to see this through, that you still believe and have faith in miracles and manifestation, whatever it may be, in yourself, right? That you have a faith in yourself, that you've been divinely endowed, divinely empowered with the ability to have sovereignty and authority over your story and your narrative. That it's like that's all that you need, but you do need to believe it, right? That's kind of the danger of belief, right? The ultimate magician is somebody that knows that belief is just a tool, right? And once you realize that belief is a tool, you can use it to your disposal, like King Solomon, right? You can get the construct to kind of work for you. You can get the elements to work for you, the planets, the demons, whatever you want to call them. You get the matrix to work for you. We reprogram it, we direct it basically, and we direct it with our emotional experiences. But one thing I will say about timelines and all of the timeline jumping is that you might be saying to yourself, well, if I'm on a new timeline, then why does everything look the same? And what I would say about that is that the timeline, it's first, the word timeline in and of itself is an issue. But it's more or less the algorithm, right? It's about cause and effect and the way that the universe responds to you. So my question would be, even though things look the same, are things responding the same way that they always have? Or when you approach certain fear scenarios, does it play out differently, right? And yes, there's still a lot of frustration, especially in terms of chasing your tail kind of activity. Like I was saying, the realtor thing, where it's just like you feel like you're on a treadmill and one door closes, then another opens, then the door that closed reopens again. You know what I mean? That's very frustrating. But beyond that, in terms of like actual fear scenarios, at least I've been noticing that it seems like as soon as you approach things, they kind of dissolve, or it's not what you thought it was. And I feel like the universe is putting us through these things to kind of encourage us to see that it's not the same as it used to be, right? We are in a new space, and your miracle is absolutely possible. It's just a matter of knowing, no, not trusting, but knowing that it is possible because you've experienced miracles before, right? And all it requires is the knowing that you don't have to know how it happens. You don't have to control the process. You don't have to intellectualize the process, define it. There's nothing that's unresolved. There's nothing that needs to happen. Everything is aligned as it is. Everything that's before you is material that can be alchemized and transmuted and used as fuel and blah, blah, blah. And everything is constantly in flux. So the timeline that you were on when you started this video is not the timeline that you're on when you end this video. So I guess I'll end it there. Um, if you're interested in a private reading for yourself, all that info is in the description box. And I'm going to be doing a live today at 7 p.m. with Tanya Powell from Adventures for Connections. That's going to be very exciting. Definitely check that out. And I'll leave all that info in the description box. And it'll also be in my community page or whatever it's called. And that's pretty much it. So thank you guys for checking this out, and I will see you soon. Bye.